Hello? Hello? Perfect. Yeah. I'm gonna turn it off. Yep. Can we please close the doors? Thank you. How are you guys today? Okay, good. Just a little reminder before we start. Remember that there is a dress code, right, that you should follow. We don't really want to be the mean guys here. So next week, just make sure that if you're not following the dress code now, that you will, okay? All right, so our speaker today is originally from Portland, Oregon, but she has a degree in international relations from American University in Washington, D.C. She studied abroad in Chile in 2009 and quickly realized that studying abroad was the best way to travel and get school credit for it. Subsequently, she did 2 more study abroad programs in the Balkans and India. She moved to Chile in 2011 and worked here at FEN in the international office for 3 years before spending a year in Japan in 2016. Now, she teaches private English classes to adults using games. So please welcome Kaya Range.
Hello? Can you hear me all? Everyone can hear me all right? Excellent. How are you? Fine? Alive? Lunch coma hasn't set in yet? You're okay? Excellent. So, as Denise introduced me, my name is Kaya. I am from Portland, Oregon, and I've been living here in Chile for the past 8 years. So, how does a woman from the US end up in Chile talking about Japan? A little bit strange, huh? Well, as you can see here, I'm from, I think, there we go, Portland, Oregon. Here's Portland in the US, that little star. It's on the west coast of the US. And I was lucky enough to grow up in the neighborhood of a Japanese immersion program, elementary school. So that means that at my elementary school, half the day was taught in English and half the day was taught in Japanese. This was a local public elementary school. So as you can see here, this is an example of a classroom today. Now the entire school is immersion program, and these kids are doing a presentation of a Japanese play. They not only teach us Japanese, but we also learn about the culture. And in 5th grade, so when the students are about 10 years old, there's the opportunity to go to Japan for like kind of a tourist thing in the summer. I didn't go because my parents decided that was too expensive, but I did go in 8th grade, so when I was about 13 years old. And that was part of the studies, and so we learned about Japan and had homework that we had to do in each location that we went to. And so that was the first time I went to Japan. After that, I continued studying Japanese through high school and college. I started learning Spanish. And my family in high school moved to Japan for 1 year. So I was a high school student in Japan. I failed all my classes. It was really hard. But yet again, I was immersed in the culture and able to learn more about the country and the language. The last time I went to Japan was just about 1.5 years ago, and I was there for a year again, and this time I was teaching English instead of my mom like before. So even though I'm not from Japan, I have a lot of experience in Japan, learning Japanese and learning about culture, the culture of Japan. When you travel to a different country, there's certain things that surprise you when you arrive, right? Who's traveled to another country before? Show of hands? Yeah. So there's a few things that surprise you when you arrive, right? Some things maybe not as much, and some things surprise you more. Language can be one of them, right? But also cultural things, like how to say hello, or if they use buses or trains or whatnot. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, are some of the differences between Japan and Chile and the US. This is a photo of me teaching English in Japan, in Kamagaya, which is about an hour outside of Tokyo. And as you can see already, there's a lot of differences. This is a classroom. Does this look like your classroom in elementary school? A little bit, yeah? Okay, well, it's a little bit different from my US classroom, but there are some similarities, right? So the first thing that you'll probably notice when you arrive in Japan is how clean and organized it is. Japan is an incredibly clean and organized country. I remember making a list one of the trips to Japan of how you know you're in Japan. I mean, kind of silly, but you know. And number one was they sell blueberry juice in the airport. Like a little cup drops down, and then they pour in the ice, and then the blueberry juice, yeah, it was awesome. And number two is that there is a street cleaner using a spatula to get the gum off the street. Really beautiful, clean streets. Here we are with my Chilean fiance. This is Shibuya, and as you can see on the sidewalk, there's also a line for those that are visually impaired. So the streets in Japan are very well marked. They have the visually impaired lines, they have bicycle lanes, and then they have incredible crosswalks. Shibuya in particular, behind us, is where they have, you might have seen online, the diagonal like crosswalks, where like just a mass of people crosses everywhere at once. That's Shibuya, that's what's happening in the background there. So despite all of these people that live in this small area in Japan, it is extremely organized. And that's part of the reason why it's so organized. You have an island, which is big, but not that big. And you have a lot of people in that small space. And when there's a lot of people, you must be well organized. Another thing that you'll notice is that when you go into a traditional restaurant or house, people's houses, or a school, you will notice these cubby holes, and these are what they call a genkan, which is the entry, where you take off your outdoor shoes, you put them in a cubby hole. If you go to school there, then it will have your name on it, the cubby hole. If you're a visitor, then you will have a visitor slot. And if you will change into your indoor shoes or your slippers. Guess, slippers, if that's your house or office, then you'll have your own indoor shoes. It's really great because you don't have to go around in the same shoes you've been running all over Tokyo in, but also it makes things much more clean, right? It protects the floors and makes it so that you're not walking around with whatever you walked in on the sidewalk. And that's actually a cultural thing that my family adopted in our house in the US. So we take off our shoes now when we enter the house. Train etiquette. Japan is notorious for having an incredible train system, right? Who here has heard of the bullet train? Bullet train? It's that really, really fast train, one of the fastest trains in the world. It uses magnets to propel itself forward. It feels like you're almost in a hoverboard or a hovercraft. Like you just can't feel as you're going along. It's really awesome. But anyway, so lots of people, again, and so you have to make sure that everyone can cohabitate. So what you'll first notice in Japan is when you're waiting to get on the train, there'll be all these lines, and it will literally, like on line 6 here in Santiago, anyone been on line 6? Yeah? Did you notice on the ground there's an attempt at a line? It'll say, please line up here. Yeah? That's what is in every station in Japan, in Tokyo at least, which is more people. It'll tell you line up here, and there'll be a really big line and for the next train, and the line next to you will be the train after that. So like super organized so that you can get on and not miss your train. The other thing you'll see here is these are some lovely traditionally dressed Japanese women and a sleeping guy. A lot of people commute on the train, and so a lot of people spend a lot of time on the train in a very small space, right? So in Japan, they are very conscious. It's a group-oriented society. And so people are very conscious of how their actions affect others. So how do people ride the train or the metro in Santiago? Like jostling each other and, oh, stop pushing me, and really, really pleasant experience, right? Rush hour? Well, in Japan, yes, there's some natural pushing and squeezing and such, but people are a lot more conscious of how they affect others. So it's a rule that when you get on the train, you must put your cell phone on silent, because, as you can see, some people might be trying to sleep in the hour or 2-hour commute that they have one direction. The other thing is you won't hear a lot of people talking loud, and you definitely will not have performers in the metro, like I heard rapping this afternoon on my way here. Because, once again, we're trying to make sure that this is a place where everyone can cohabitate together. Oops. There we go. Japan is a very floor-oriented country. So traditionally, homes, offices, everything was on the floor. So on cushions, but you sat on the floor. Women sat on their knees, like so. Like this is the most formal way to sit. Men could sit crisscrossed. And you get up and down constantly throughout the day, right? The tables are on the floor. As you can see here, this is my living room, was my living room. And they're sitting on the couch. It's on the floor. Like it's a couch, but without the legs. So it's basically you're sitting on a couch on the floor. Does that make sense? It was pretty awesome. It also folded out into a bed. But so people are getting up and getting down, and what are they doing? They're using their muscles. And as you know, if you don't exercise, what happens to your muscles? They go away, right? They disappear. You have no muscles. If you don't use something, you lose it. That works for all abilities. If you don't practice math, you forget math. If you don't practice English, you forget English. If you don't practice how to ride a bicycle, it might be hard to ride a bicycle, right? So what we're seeing nowadays, this is traditional Japan, right? This is my traditional guest bedroom in my friend's house. And nowadays, people are using more Western-style things. So Western beds, like here in Chile. Tables also, normal size, height, and chairs. And what we're seeing is the older generation is becoming a lot less able. They're not being able to use their muscles because they no longer use them. So it's kind of an unfortunate thing. And that's the great thing about having a floor-oriented culture. So if you go to a formal restaurant or a formal meeting, it's very likely that it will be on the floor. So just keep that in mind. You might want to practice before you go. Food in Japan. Oh, I was in food heaven. It was the best year ever. Food in Japan is not only delicious and healthy, but also beautiful. I mean, look at this. They look like works of art, right? I mean, this one looks a little more normal, but this is a school lunch. So here are some of my students in the classroom, and they are eating their Japanese school lunch. And they're in the classroom. Do you guys in Chile eat lunch in the classroom? No, right? In the US, neither. In Japan, there's a company in the school system, most of the school systems, that delivers the food already made and hot in these containers, and there's a container for each classroom. And there's one team of students that goes and gets those containers and brings it back up to their classroom. At lunchtime, all the children will push their desks together in long rows or in little groups, and that team will serve all of the students in the class. It's pretty amazing. And this is without teacher supervision. I mean, the teacher will help, but the kids know exactly what to do. And once everyone is served, then they will sit down and say, "Itadakimasu," which basically means I will receive this food or thank you for this food. So it's kind of a fun little detail about the life in Japan. But the other fun thing is that, as you can see here, there's rice. There's usually rice, milk, Western influence, a main dish, which will have meat or chicken or fish, right? This is tofu. Whoops, tofu. And then you'll have a soup of some sort, which usually has vegetables, meat broth, or seafood, and all was extremely delicious. I just was crazy about school lunch. It was the best part of my day. So not as beautiful as these incredible, more professional restaurant lunches, but still not that bad, right? And very healthy. Now, if you look at professionally made things, this is actually a home-cooked meal that one of our friends made us. It is incredibly beautiful. And has anyone gone to a restaurant where the food is incredibly beautiful? Right? Yeah, occasionally? Doesn't that make you want to eat it more? Although sometimes it's too pretty and you're just like, no, I can't destroy it. The same thing happened to me like every day. It was amazing. But it makes you that much more excited about eating it. So just kind of interesting how appearance can affect the way you enjoy food. Respect and tradition, and certainty. So Japan is quite well known for being a very respectful country. Like, people respect, and being polite is extremely important in Japan. Putting on having your public face, because again, it's an island, right? Yeah, no, yes. Island, yes. Geography, it's an island. Very good. And lots of people, small area, so we want to make sure that we can all get along, right? So that's why we make sure that we are respectful of each other. Also, Japan is on what we call the Ring of Fire. Has anyone heard of that? It's very seismically active. There's a lot of volcanoes and a lot of earthquakes, like Chile. But actually, Japan has more earthquakes than Chile. But they're not as strong. So they would be temblores instead of terremotos. Does that make sense? So it's kind of bad. It got to the point where I would be sleeping and it'd be like, oh, no, we're good, okay. And I'd go back to sleep. Really bad. You should always make sure you're awake to be able to get out of the house, right? But anyway, that's the difference. So a lot of uncertainty in the country. You don't know if today there's going to be a big earthquake or a big volcano, or has anyone heard the word tsunami? Yes? That's a Japanese word for tidal wave, right? The giant waves. But that word is now internationally known. That tells you how many tsunamis they have in Japan. So there's a lot of uncertainty. People don't know what will happen with the environment, which is why, to survive, right, tradition becomes so important. If the world may be crumbling and moving around you, then the only way to make sure you can mentally and physically survive is if you have a controlled set of traditions in your society, right? Does that make sense? Yeah? So one of those things involves ceremonies. There's a lot of ceremonies in Japan, which is kind of cool. This actually is the first grade elementary entrance ceremony. So these little guys in these tiny little suits, they're so cute. The tiniest suits I've ever seen. It was amazing. This is their first day of school. So they have just been welcomed into the school. These are their parents behind them. And this is the principal, like the director. And this is their homeroom teacher. And they have just been welcomed into the school by the staff of the school, all the teachers, but also by the other students. So in elementary school in Japan, it goes from first grade to sixth grade. So from like 6 years old to about 11 or 12 years old. And so the upper two grades the 5th and 6th graders actually participate in this ceremony and do like this cute little dance and like song and like welcome. And it's just beautiful. Oops, sorry. It's just really nice to see the unity in the school, right? I mentioned earlier that Japan is a group-oriented society, right? This is another example of how that is incorporated. So when you are born, you are part of your family unit, right? But then you go to preschool, and then you go to elementary school, and that becomes your group. When you graduate and go to junior high school, and then high school, and then university, and then after that, your company, your work becomes your group. So it's not that the individual, you as an individual is more important, but you as part of a group is the important thing. So you do what you can to help the group goal, right? So that with that comes a little bit of pressure, but it also means that once you're part of a workplace, then you're part of the workplace. Like if there's a work event, everyone from work goes to that. Only those that are part of the company, right? So no boyfriends or girlfriends or husbands or wives or whatever. It's just the people who are part of the group. So that's kind of a cool thing. Positive group support. This is another thing that I was really, it's just so wonderful about Japan. If you, anyone here watch anime? Raise your hand proudly. My fiance is crazy about anime. I have Dragon Ball in my living room. But anyway, what you might notice, like if you've seen the soccer one, I see some nodding heads. Okay, you might have noticed, and even in some of the others, that they say, "Ganbatte, ganbatte ne, ganbatte kudasai." Yaro, you can do it. Or ganbatte is like, please work hard, you can do it. And they are constantly saying that to each other. At work, ganbatte kudasai. Your director or your boss will say it to you. Ganbatte ne, your colleagues. You know, you can do it, you work hard. It's just so great to have everyone trying to help each other to do that. But what surprised me most was, where is this? It's not a classroom, it's not a company, it's a soccer field, or as in UK English, a football field, right? So soccer in Japanese is sakka, from the US soccer, and they are extremely dedicated to their soccer and baseball and basketball teams. Thus the anime about soccer and baseball and basketball. Anyway, and they will cheer the entire game, like in Chile, right? But there is a cheer for every single player on the team. So like when Vidal has a moment, they'll be rooting for Vidal with his special personalized cheer. When Bravo has his moment, they'll be cheering exactly his cheer. And then they'll also have many cheers for the entire team. I'm sorry, I did not learn them all, but I was given the paper. That was very helpful. So it's just really great to have all this positive energy. You will not hear any boos, boo, or negative telling the ref to go beep, you know, as in other countries. So it's a really wonderful thing to have, again, this positive support, even on the soccer field. In Japan, the students have a really well-rounded education. I was extremely surprised. They learn, like most everyone in the world does, math, science, language arts, social studies, right? Everything that you guys probably learned in your schools too. But they also learn how to recycle. They learn how to sew and cook, both men and women, the girls and the boys. They learn geography. They learn how to calculate what time it is in one point of the world just by knowing the coordinates. And they can calculate the other place. Like, I learned it at one point in high school, but whoosh, barely learned. And geography is also really good in terms of knowing what countries are where. I would present myself to various different age groups in the 3 schools that I worked at. I mostly taught the 5th and 6th graders, so the older kids, but occasionally I would teach the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th graders. And I would usually do the, hi, I'm Kaya, I'm from Portland in Chile. Where's Chile? Assuming silence. And there was always one little hand that would go up and be able to point approximately or exactly where Chile was on the map. And these are little kids. Chile, Japan, like kind of opposite sides of the world. And yet, almost every time there was at least one kid that knew where it was. Pretty impressive. They also learn about taxes and other social services, like where their tax money goes. I went to a presentation when the government team that does these education sessions came to the 6th graders and 5th graders. It was just for them. And they teach you where your tax money goes, what that helps you with. The ambulances are free in Japan because that's where the tax money goes. And just like really important information that would be nice to know, right? And again, as I said, recycling. In Japan, they're very, very strict, very motivated about recycling. They recycle a lot, and then they also have garbage that they burn. And they use that burning process to create energy as well. So everything is used for something in the end in Japan. They even have a day when you set out your old clothes or like old microwaves and such. Like there's a special day for each thing that you might have around the house that you get to put on the curb and they will take away for you. Pretty awesome. Appreciation of nature is another really cool thing about Japan. Anyone heard of Japanese gardens? Yeah, there's one here in Santiago, by the way. I haven't been to it, but I've heard it's nice. Japan is very aware of nature. Calendars here in Chile tend to be more oriented to puppies and kittens or holidays, right? So like September will be 18, right? Yes, no, I don't know. What's a calendar? Right, so in the US, it's pretty similar as well. But in Japan, the calendar, almost every month, has connected with it a flower or a tree and some holidays. So I learned that in May, which in the northern hemisphere is spring, that is the season for, what's the name of it? Those big flowers. It's like a big flower that has a lot of tiny little flowers that are like blues and purples. I'm blanking on the name in English, but anyway, they're beautiful. But that's what's on all of the calendars. It's always going to be pictures of that. And when the springtime sakura cherry blossoms start blooming, the weather people will show a map of Japan, and they will show the sakura front. Not like the cold weather front, but the sakura front, in where the blossoms are blooming in which parts of Japan. It's just really cool. Sakura season especially is very special in Japan, and as you can see, you can see here a little bit, people will go out and enjoy them with their families, or here they are with their companies. And as you can see here, they'll have picnics. They'll put down tarps or blankets, take off their shoes. Let's not forget that, right? And they're all pretty formally dressed here, so I'm assuming this is a company event. And they will go and enjoy good food and some alcoholic beverages as well underneath the beautiful cherry blossoms. It's just old people, young people, everyone. It's just really, really cool. It's a chatty world in Japan. Chari is short for bicycle, jitensha in Japanese. Jitensha, chari. It works in Japanese. And again, small space, lots of people, narrow roads, a little bit crazy walking or driving or bicycling along them. But that means that Most people will bicycle to work or the store or whatever. This is me on my beautiful, wonderful, loyal bicycle. And I miss it. It was wonderful. And it was a Japanese bicycle, so it had a few alterations. This is a basket, but it is covered by this wonderful rain protection. So I could put my stuff in there and it would rain and nothing would happen. It was the best. Another lovely detail, these are like hand protectors that have fuzzy blanket material on the inside. So even when it rained or it was winter, my hands were nice and toasty. It was the best thing ever. Also, on the back here, you notice the rack, yeah? So I could tie things up. Other people had a basket on the back of their bicycle. I inherited one with a rack. And then this is the bicycle stand. It's a triangular piece of metal, kind of like this, and you kick it, you pull up the back of the wheel, kick it into place, and lock it, and that's how your bike stands up, which is amazing. Then when you want to go, unlock it, and you just get on and start pedaling, and it will go back to its normal resting position. The other thing that you can't see in this photo is there's a little bike lock that is incorporated into the bicycle. It's right behind the seat, in like part of the wheel, and you'll push it down, and it will make it so that the wheel cannot go forward or backwards. So it locks through the wheel, which is really useful. I mean, it does mean that someone could take your entire bike with them, but it would be more difficult. And Japan is pretty safe, so there are very few bicycle thieves. Bathing in Japan. This is probably one of the biggest shockers for people, or culture shock moments, you know, when there's some part of a culture that's really different from your own, that's culture shock. But it's also one of my favorite parts of Japan. So bathing in Japan, there's two options. You have the bathrooms, like where you have the shower and bath in the house or a hotel. And you also have hot springs or bath houses, which will be a public space or that you pay for to get in, but other people. In your private home or hotel or whatever, it will literally be an entire room that is waterproofed. So like you shower here outside of the tub. This is the bathtub that is covered. And so first you shower. Sometimes there's a little stool that you can sit on. And you can use the traditional ways to use a bucket. There's usually a bucket here. And you use it to dump water on you. Or, of course, showering is easier. And then once you're clean, you roll back this cover, and it is like a freshwater hot tub. It's warm or hot water that is recirculated. So you can stay in that tub for hours if you wanted to. It would never get cold. It's like the best thing ever. I really, really miss it. If anyone figures out how to send me one, let me know. But anyway, this allows the entire household to use the same bath water without wasting, getting all the water out and filling it back up, right? Again, the family unit as working together to ensure that we're using our resources the best of our abilities. And because you've already washed off, that means that you're clean. So again, you can use that water. In public bathhouses, it's a little different. So it's divided by gender. You'll have men on one side, women on the other, like in completely separated, you can't see each other. But you all have to take off all of your clothes. No swimsuits, no underwear, no towels. Just you in your birthday suit. Your skin, naked. This can be a little shocking for people that aren't used to being naked around other people, and I understand. But everyone, we're all humans. We all got the same parts or something similar, right? And so people may look at you because they're curious, because it's pretty obvious if you're a foreigner in Japan, right? It's a pretty homogenous society. But don't feel shy or nervous. Everyone will probably be a little nervous too that there's foreigners there. So just enjoy the experience because it is amazing. So in bathhouses or in hot springs, there's little stalls outside of the pools that you sit down in and shower and get cleaned off in. And then you're able to go into the bath, or if it's a hot springs, they'll have different kinds of water. I once soaked in water that had a giant green tea bag. So I soaked in green tea. It was great. I also was in this water that had, I don't know what kind of minerals, but it was the color of coffee, right? But if this was the surface of the water, my hand was here, and I could not see my hand. Like, that's how dark the water was, and it felt soft. So when I got out of the water, my skin was incredibly soft. It was the coolest thing ever. And again, all of these are really, really hot, warm water, so extremely wonderful. They also might have jets or, some kind of special indoor and outdoor pools. I once was in one hot spring, and it had just snowed, so there was snow all around me. That was exciting. Someone, not me, someone laid in the snow naked and then got back in the water. That was a little much for me, but possible. So yes, Japan is an incredibly different country from Chile and the US. It has lots of things that might be a little shocking, but it is also a really beautiful country. Japanese people are going to be the most incredible hosts that you will ever meet in your entire life. So if you get a chance to go to Japan, I highly encourage you to do so. And if not, if you manage to meet a Japanese person here in Chile, please try and make friends with them. They tend to be really shy because, again, we're coming from a society where you know what your role in that society is to a completely unknown world, right? So try and interact with them because you'll learn much more probably than I was able to tell you here in just a 25-minute, 30-minute presentation. So if you have any further questions, you can let me know now or email me. Any questions? I see one there or up here. I think there's a...
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question of the education system that you mentioned that the school food, like they bring them and they bring it. Who pays for it? Who pays for like school food?
So the children pay us a certain amount every year, but it's based on your income. So when you apply to elementary school, the application process is through your family, right? So it's a reduced lunch for those that can't afford it. But the teachers also pay, it's like nothing. But they do pay for the school lunch.
In public schools, for example?
Yeah, that's public schools.
Oh, so, and education, it's free in public schools?
Yes.
So you only pay like for the food?
Right,
maybe.
and again, if your family can't afford to pay, then you obviously don't pay. The price, there's a maximum price, of course, which would be the full price of the lunch, but it's based on your family income.
Perfect.
Great question. Another question?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. First, thank you for being here with us. And
Thank you.
based in your experience in living in Japan, do you think that their culture, and the Japanese are maybe open to the new ideas that we as students can offer to them, like new products or service?
That is a really good question. Every culture will have people that are more open to new things and less open to new things, right? Even in here in Chile, right? Who has parents or grandparents that are still struggling with technology? right? Yeah, exactly. So obviously you'll have that, but also Japan is a very traditional society. So I did find it a little bit difficult for me to deal with this hierarchical and very traditional society where things have been working this way since medieval times in some aspects, right? So they're a little bit more not as excited about change or new products as they could be. Obviously, it depends on what industry you're in and what age group, right? Just as it does in Chile. I was in the public school system, which is about as traditional as you can get. So it was really hard to be innovative. They really liked it, but again, it's an uncertain world, so making sure that everything works a certain way is really important to them. So you have that kind of going up against you. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. It just may be a little bit more difficult. So I would suggest like knowing a Japanese person and helping them present your product or get into that company if that's what you're interested in.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Hi, Kaya.
Hi.
My question is, does the Japanese people have troubles or maybe some problems with their own traditions? For example, in terms maybe in discrimination, something like that?
Yes. I mean, every country and culture has their difficulties within the society, right? And that is actually one that we're currently looking at, as the Prime Minister of Japan right now, Mr. Abe, is more of a traditionalist. And so in this moment, things are turning more towards the traditional means, which is a little frustrating, but I think that's what we're seeing around the world. It's always a balance between changing and maintaining something, right? So things are improving. Like, for example, it's a pretty patriarchal society. So the status of women, for example, in the royal family, women cannot be emperors. And they're starting to try and evaluate that because the royal family is going to disappear if they don't change that. So that's an example of where that's something that they're talking about. I saw a
Kaya?
question over- Yeah?
Is there, okay, just one more because we have to take a test.
Yes.
Hello. Hi. I was actually wondering, like, when you got to Chile, what was your biggest cultural shock that you had to face?
Yeah, I would say that was how people greet each other. So in the US, in my family, we're big on hugs. But if it's someone that you're just meeting for the first time, you don't typically, unless it's a friend of a friend, hug them. And here in Chile, you hug them, and then you put your face, if you're a woman, right up to their face. Please say they washed it. And kiss the air next to it. And that's a little much for some people in the US. It was a little bit of an adjustment to me here too. So that would probably be the biggest ones. Other little details are minor.
Guys, thank you so much for coming today.
You're welcome.
Can we give her a round of applause, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I think we're ready for your questions.
And also feel free to email me if you have other questions. So these are your 2 questions, and good luck, everyone.
20 minutes. 10 minutes. 5 minutes. Three more minutes. one more minute, so please start finishing up. All right, time's up. I'm sorry. Please stop writing.